All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so I think we will begin just to be respectful of everyone's time, and we've got a lot of great material to cover today. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our presentation today, Digital Stewardship in a Post-COVID Global Philanthropy World. We're delighted that you could join us. Just a few notes as we get started. This webinar is being recorded, so you are welcome to take notes as we go through, but you will also receive a link to the recording after we've concluded today so that you can go back and review, especially if there's any particular tidbits that struck your interest. You'll be able to access that after we are done today. That will be being emailed to you, so watch your email for that. And also just want to say is as we go through our presentation today, if you have any questions or things that come up as we're speaking, please feel free to put those into the chat window. We'll be keeping an eye on that, but we'll also be allowing ample time for Q&A at the end of the presentation today as well. So we really want to make this interactive to be able to address your questions and have a bit of a dialogue about what is digital stewardship. What does it look like today? What are practices that will really sustain your donors going forward in this more digital and global philanthropy world? So I'll start by just saying a little bit about Chapel in York. Many of you who are here today are either clients or fund holders with Chapel in York, but for those who aren't, what I can share about Chapel in York is that we consider ourselves the home of international philanthropy. That's really our brand and our tagline. We lean into that heavily. We do that through a global family of foundations and international charity management, as well as international fundraising services. So those are kind of our three pillars. And really our goal is to facilitate and grow international philanthropy. So many of you are here today because of those relationships with us, but for those who aren't, I'm happy to share more about how we do that, but it's really to help charities be present in countries outside of where they are established. So if you're based in the EU, but you want to fundraise in the US or vice versa, that's really what we exist to help you with through our various services. I am the executive director for the U.S. Foundation of Chapel in York and also the leader of our family of foundations, which are located in 7 different countries around the world. We are delighted to be offering this webinar today on such a critical topic and how we're stewarding our donors in this new digital world, especially doing it on a global scale. And I'm just delighted to have with us our host today, Douglas Tanton. And I'll just say a little bit about him in the introduction. Hopefully you had an opportunity to read his bio in the webinar invitation as well. Can we go to the next slide, Douglas? Because this is all about you. So Douglas is one of our strategic partners for Chapel in York as part of the international fundraising that I mentioned. He's also a partner in One Step Productions. So has extensive extensive experience in global development and philanthropy. As a team leader, a trainer, a mobilizer. He's worked in many countries around the world, including development of global and national business, fundraising, audience growth, strategic planning, digital audience development, stewardship, boards and governance. He's really done quite a bit, very notable. And I'm just honored that he is sharing his expertise and knowledge with us today. Also with us today, we have Guinness Ebchin. She is with the World Food Program and will share what their digital stewardship program looks like as well. And we'll hear from her a little bit more about her later in the presentation. But without further delay, I want to hand it off to Douglas so we can really dig into our subject of the day, digital stewardship.
Thank you so much, Heather, and welcome, Guinness, and welcome all participants. It's great to be here, and it's an exciting time, and it's an exciting topic to talk about as a fundraiser. So let's kind of break down things today. What are we going to talk about a little bit? Well, it's about digital stewardship. Let's unpack what it means for your nonprofit to have a digital stewardship program. What are some of the key tools and tactics that nonprofits employ for their digital stewardship programs? Secondly, it's about that kind of a post-COVID world and how has our interaction with our donors and prospective donors been impacted by COVID restrictions? lack of movement, face-to-face gatherings being restricted. It's had a significant impact on us. And more importantly, we've had to employ all of these coping measures to deal with COVID. And some of them have become really successful parts of our digital platforms for the future. It's about a global philanthropy world. So indeed, it's not just about digital stewardship when you're working in the Austrian marketplace or the Slovakian marketplace or the Australian marketplace. It's about a global philanthropic world. How has our ability to steward and engage and nurture donors digitally, how has that changed as teams and programs now work across multiple borders and multiple cultural settings? We're going to hear from Ganesh and some of the work that they've done at World Food Program, which has been really exciting. We really look at this time, our time together, as an opportunity to embrace a really open conversation. Ganesh and I met earlier today, and we talked about how exciting it was to hear from different people from different perspectives. So we're going to run through some slides and give you some of our thoughts and some of our ideas. But this really works and really is an energizing learning platform when we hear from you with your questions and answers. And I'm going to monitor the chat, as is Heather. And as questions are compiled, we'll come back after Ganesh and I do our presentation. We'll have a really open floor Q&A period. And that's usually very exciting time. Thank you. So let's move forward. So those are the three areas we're going to look at. Now, if I can figure out how to change the slide. Let's understand what digital stewardship means. The first thing I want to say is, and if I pause from moment to moment, it's because I'm admitting people into the room to participate, which is great. It doesn't matter where your donors are acquired. People say, well, I don't really have a digital stewardship program because most of our donors are foundations or are major givers that came through a face-to-face transaction, or are, in fact, low-level monthly donors who came from a face-to-face street campaign. But no, that's not correct. You can have a full and enriched digital stewardship program regardless of where your donors came to you, your key partners, your friends. It's about how do you develop the ongoing digital connection to those individuals and groups and corporations and foundations. How do you build your digital communication channels following the point of acquisition to build and reinforce your donor engagement? So you're going to hear us talk a little bit about donor stewardship and donor engagement digitally, but we're not going to differentiate how much donors gave when they started and where they came from. We're going to make the assumption that we all have really diverse, strong acquisition programs. We have foundations who support us. We have major donors. We have corporations. We have high net worth individuals, mid-level donors from direct mailing programs. We have special appeal, direct mail donors. We have Facebook leads that have been converted digitally. Many, many individuals who are all part of our donor family. And we're suggesting that we can build digital stewardship for all of them. Thank you. What are some of the key tools and tactics that nonprofits are employing for their digital stewardship programs? One of the first things that we're going to talk about, you'll hear from Ganesh on some of these pieces later on also, folks, is automation. And that starts with email automation. There's a really hot conversation these days on whether nonprofit organizations should really compel themselves to have a highly automated system. And what we're going to suggest is that there is an opportunity and ability to have a personalized program for individuals in your donor pool, but it also behooves the organization to have a highly automated donor digital stewardship program that starts with email automation. The second point that people are all talking about is narrative-based push contents, or short stories that you see, web-based stories that are being pushed out. You can see it with UNICEF. You can see a lot of those short stories recently with UNHCR reporting on the situation in Ukraine. You can see short stories of the World Food Program and what they're doing around the world that are being posted on different web platforms. 5 years ago, I could ask many of my fundraising colleagues around the world, did they have a YouTube channel or a Vimeo channel? And they would say, no, do we need that? And now you can see that everyone has a video channel and they feed contents to it on a regular basis. Also, for digital stewardship, one of the other hot areas that we're going to talk a little bit more about today is one-to-one or group video, audio, push messaging and chats. You're seeing a lot more group audio, visual events similar to this platform today, where we're talking or doing a training about philanthropy, fundraising, and global development. And many organizations are using these platforms, Zoom, Google Meets, so many diversity of platforms, to share their digital contents with the donors that they're stewarding. We're going to try and keep moving here. Digital conferences could be with Q&A. Again, like today, broad video messages that could be pre-recorded in some cases are shared around the world. And then some organizations do this thing where they break up the Q&As by country. And live in the field digital conferences. I know that's something that Guinness and the team at World Food Program excel at and do a lot of, is they have reporters in the field showing the impact of your donations to a digital audience globally. And that can be sliced and diced with Q&A, could be by market, by language. Sometimes an organization like World Food Program or UNICEF or UNHCR will have multiple languages being reported in the field, and they will do 3, 4, 5, 6 messages from the field, and then they'll distribute them all to different countries. So it's quite exciting, some of those pieces and what's happening in digital stewardship. So we're activating new uses for our digital tools and channels. That's been happening during COVID, because we haven't been able to be in front of people as often, and post-COVID. You're seeing organizations move more and more. I think I saw in the United States that some 60% of all organizations now use a virtual thanks and welcome process to replace printed thanks. And more importantly, the other 40% have reported that within the next 24 months, they're moving to a fully virtual or digital thank you and welcome process. That's one of the most costliest implementations, has been digital quarterly or annual reports or digital updates or campaign updates. And those virtual or digital thanks and welcomes are replacing, for a matter of cost, and also for a matter of being able to steward donors in a digital world and do it so that there is a unique experience for all donor groups and individuals. One of the last areas that's really moved forward is virtual middle and major giving cultivations, stewardship events, cases for support, conversations. And for a long time, a lot of the major giving groups said, perhaps those will always be face-to-face, but that's been changing very quickly over the last 24 months. I like to use the example that 5 to 10 years ago, I would buy a book from Amazon on a digital platform, and that was very exciting to spend $20 online. Then about between 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would buy a bicycle that I had been researching. I would really like to use and have it shipped to me on the internet, and it would be really exciting. Over the last 5 years, and that takes into account all the COVID time, folks, individuals have been buying houses online, their primary residence. They're doing virtual real estate tours. So as an industry, we're catching up and recognizing that those people who wish to donate at middle and major giving levels wish to do so digitally. And in fact, myself and my partner have been implementing a number of training projects for larger nonprofits to use social media to cultivate middle and major giving groups of individuals. And we are continue to be shocked and surprised at the amount of donations we're able to generate in a digital world. So it is growing as the general population has grown on the internet, that individuals will now do their major personal investments, buying houses, vacations, everything, high ticket items are all being bought digitally. So there's no reason why we need to stop and say, oh, we can only have digital stewardship amongst our low-level donors. Actually, our middle donors, our major donors, the foundations and groups that Heather was speaking of, or Guinness might speak of, are all highly interested in having that digital stewardship program. And as I said earlier, the post-COVID world has shown us the importance of field digital video. And I'm not sure whether we'll invite Guinness to make a couple of comments on that later when she presents, because we can see around the world just how important the transparency and uniqueness and honesty of immediate field video that's happening in the field. It's very exciting for individual organizations. We're seeing less emphasis on having a highly edited process and contents, and we're seeing organizations really work with a immediate, live from the field format. It's raw, it's honest, and it's really helping donors in a digital stewardship sense feel really heartfelt that they're close to the organization. We've heard from different organizations that they get to know the camera people, that donors around the world tune in and wait for their weekly or monthly update and find out where they are. Is everything okay? Did the food get delivered in Afghanistan? How are things happening? What's happening on the ground in Poland right now? They want to hear those things. And so that immediacy of digital field video is so important. I'm taking all of the space and I'm going to turn it over to Guinness here in a moment, but just a couple more slides with some more information is timed or regularly scheduled virtual events that are attended by donors from a multitude of national offices like you folks today who are coming across national boundaries means that organizations like the World Food Program, like UNHCR, like Red Cross, like your nonprofit, can fundraise across borders by stewarding donors digitally across borders in a way that is supportive to each national office. We're seeing cases where an organization, maybe like World Food Program, would say, next Tuesday, we're going to have a global update from the field to tell you how we're getting food to people on the ground in Ukraine. That will be a live presentation. And following that presentation, you'll hear from the stewardship team in your local office, and they will help you understand what you can do to help support that. So global contents split into national offices, bringing people together, and then again, slicing and dicing it back to national context is really important for digital stewardship. I've given the example of the Global Fund for Women, and because connecting like-minded donors that have been grouped across national boundaries, you're seeing much more of this. I'm not sure if World Food Program has it, but I know that UNHCR has global young professionals groups, and UNICEF has global women's groups that all work together to fund philanthropically or that engage digitally to solve certain problems in the field. Professional alignment groups. We've been working with a group of architects globally and connecting Canadian architects to a global group. And that's been part of what we've been doing with some of our training. So we can see that there's a number of professional groups that align across like-minded donor pools or engagement pools. And that's a really big way to steward your donors, make them feel, well, I'm just a middle donor woman in the Austrian office, but I'm part of this national women's philanthropy group with the cause I so dearly care about. And I'm really energized in a global sense. And every month I have my global women's philanthropy meeting and I participate and I see other women who are leading foundations around the world. So it's a great opportunity. Women's groups, men's groups, youth, student groups, young professions, retired individuals. There's so many ways that we now can slice and dice our groups across national boundaries globally. So at this time, I'd like to take a moment and pause and say that's enough for me for the afternoon. And I'd really like to introduce you to someone who I know is really pleased to be here today. And she's a good friend who is someone who inspires me every day with her work. And her name is Güneş Ebcim, and she's with the World Food Program. She leads the Global Supporter Experience Program at the World Food Program. And before that, she worked for UNICEF, Greenpeace. She hails from Turkey, a very well-known consultant and advisor. And now she's been with the World Food Program for some 3 or 4 years, I think she was saying. And we're going to hear from Güneş today because over the past 3 years, the World Food Program has implemented a fully digital stewardship transformation. And Güneş has been so pleased to be a part of that over the past 2 or 3 years in different ways. And as she moves into this Global Supporter Experience Program, Güneş was really excited to share for the first time what World Food Program is doing. And we're so happy that she's decided to share that with us today. And I know that that's a really exciting development. So Güneş, we're happy to have you, and over to yourself. I guess the first...
thank you very much, Douglas, for this introduction.
If you'd like to give some context on the World Food Program, I just put a few notes together. It's the largest humanitarian program, and I'll turn it over to you there.
Yeah, so as many of you, I think that I guess that the World Food Program is not very well known worldwide, even though WFP is the world's largest humanitarian organization. And working on saving lives in emergencies and using food assistance to build a pathway to peace and stability. And also, I mean, so it has an agenda for saving lives and changing lives. And as part of our private sector partnerships fundraising strategy, which was, I mean, this is the 3rd year of it now. We have been heavily investing in individual giving. So, I mean, yeah, before that, it was more like corporates and foundations work and government funds. So, so individual giving is quite new for World Food Program. And I'm really excited about sharing our details of our program. So if you can move to the next slide, maybe I can
move to the next slide and ask you a few questions. What attracted you most to the role, and where do you think you can really make a difference in this role? Because I think people are really interested to hear how you make an impact with digital stewardship.
So, I mean, first of all, I mean, it's really, I mean, when you get to know what WFP does at the field, it's an amazing operation, global operation, and it is really, I mean, you can see the big impact of the work on the ground, and first of all, being part of it is just great. And as you know, I mean, Hungary is growing worldwide, and after COVID, it is, I mean, it triggered hunger, famine, much more, and it's like 45 million people are at the edge of famine. So it's the work we do is quite important, and people are really interested in knowing more about our work. And so we see we are getting support from all around the world, over 100, almost like 200 from 200 countries, and it is, I mean, I'm excited because it's a global work that we do. It's a truly global work, and we have a global hub of skilled fundraising specialists. Only 11 of us are in Rome, and the rest of them are all around the world. And I have been in fundraising, focused on individual giving for almost like 20 years. And so it is an opportunity for me to use my experience when building something from scratch. But at the same time, you need to really forget what you know, and to start thinking out of box. I mean, that's what I had to do is time to time.
And I can see from these three charts, and we don't have to dwell on it too far, that you're having great increase year over year, 2019, 2020, 2021.
So, yeah, I wanted to bring this up. I mean, I don't want to talk much about the numbers, but I mean, if any questions we can, of course. But this one just maybe it might be good to show, because to see the kind of growth with the strategy. So we started with 3 million in 2019, and it was 12 million next year and 24 million last year. And almost half of it is coming from existing supporters. I mean, for this 12 million of it comes from existing. So yeah, it's a great growth process. Sorry?
To be clear, almost half of your earned revenue of individual givers is coming from your digital stewardship program.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's quite big at the moment, and so this also shows how much we invest in that. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that because we really like this graph a lot. This is really a motivation for us.
Congratulations. What are the exciting things that you're doing in digital donor stewardship now?
So, as I said, it's a fully global approach. So, you know, I worked for UNICEF and Greenpeace in the past. As many of you might know that, you know, the INGOs generally work like national committee models or, you know, local offices, and global offices generally tend to support the local offices. In our case, we have only 3 local offices. Other than that, so we serve to the whole, you know, globe. And and then if you can come back to the previous slide, Douglas, thank you. So it is a multi-channel approach. When I say multi-channel, it is Facebook, phone, WhatsApp, SMS, and email mainly. We don't have any mailing at all. only for donors who are really over 80, who doesn't want to get any emails, or who doesn't have an email at all, to send a text receipt maybe, but other than that, we don't have any mailing. And what we also do, I mean, when we first started this program, it is, I mean, I have to say that it's really tech heavy program. We really invested a lot in tech stack, and then we have a sophisticated backend. But it's, I mean, when I say we have, it's an ongoing process. It's not something, you know, happening in a day. So it's you know, developing day by day, and journeys, well, you know, online journeys. And in the past, you know, in fundraising, I worked with data insight teams, and I always think that it's very important to have data insight specialists in the team. But in here, we really invest a lot in data insight, and we want to build a program which is fully data driven. So data driven decision making is the kind of, you know, one of the key things that we are focusing. And we have a quite large data insight team that helps us, you know, identify the key areas and, you know, focus on testing. And so continuous testing and optimization is an important part of the work as well.
How do you think your this program, how do you embrace donors that are, let's say, first year versus second or third year of donating? I know that has always been a big thing for me, is the difference. What did you focus on when you started building your digital stewardship, and how are you moving that forward?
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, our program is quite new. So I mean, of course, the first 3 months, first 6 months is, you know, quite important, especially for regular giving. So we really focused on building the core journeys for the first year, first 12 months. And still it's a process, it's a development process, I can say. I mean, for example, we first developed the journey, but then, you know, after testing and optimization and everything, now we have a refreshed journey, because, you know, we have seen that some of them worked well, some of them didn't work well. So it's also a continuous optimization. So still we are, I mean, I have to say that we are developing it for second year, third year. It's, I mean, so, but the key thing is to make sure that the first year is totally set really well. And for the, you know, for the ongoing supporters, for the existing supporters, what we are currently using is more like we have an annual content calendar, and the kind of structure. So that includes all donors, you know, old ones, new ones, everyone. But then we, of course, have variants of these emails for lapsed donors, for active donors, RG donors, SG donors, single donors, regular donors. So we have variants, or we have dynamic contents for each of them, for each appeal. And so that's how we kind of differentiate. And what we are kind of following is like an appeal, reminder, feedback cycle, and this is really working really well for us. I mean, appeals are, you know, hard ask, and then and the feedback pieces are very soft asks, and it's really working very well in development of supporters. And for example, at the end of year campaign this year, like even the thank you email after the, you know, end of year campaign raised a lot, and also converted a lot of donors to regular givers. So all these feedback pieces are working really well in our, you know, annual calendar. And the other important thing is we have some new, I mean, the team is developing. Like, we started as 7 people in IG, in individual giving. Now we are almost like 30 people. So, for example, we will have a global supporter journey person who will be totally focused on building journeys. And also we are recruiting a person who is totally focused on Facebook retention program. So that's another kind of amazing role, a kind of exciting role in our stewardship team. So yeah, I mean, it is an ongoing process, I would say. The program is developing day by day.
Thanks, Ganesh. Very interesting. Are there some exciting examples of things that you're doing to build engagement with your supporters on your digital platforms? Or what would you say are the really exciting things that you're building these days?
Yes, I just mentioned also in the other question that, Facebook retention program, I think, is quite exciting. So we already kind of, started working on it, a few years ago, but still there's a lot to test in that area. So it's, you can do a lot around that. So it's not only for asking something new, but is a retention tool, like welcoming them. So welcome journey is, so it is happening both on email and Facebook, welcoming video, and let's say impact stories and everything. So there are quite a lot to test in Facebook retention area. And maybe I should also mention that almost, more than 80% of our donors comes from Facebook as well. This is a totally digital acquisition program. So that makes sense, of course, also, to have a retention program on Facebook. But even if it was not recruited on Facebook, still I think it makes sense to be on Facebook. People tend to give their second gifts on Facebook, for example. So it is, we see that a lot. And the other thing is our global supporter care agency. That was one of the challenges at the very beginning, how you're going to give service to the supporters if they are, all around the world. So we started recruiting supporters only in English. And then, we have an agency based in the UK. And we have a team of around 20 people who gives supporter services. So responding to their questions by email, by WhatsApp, and also they are responding to the Facebook ads. Like if there are comments, they also respond to these comments. And so now we have a team of, we have 6 languages. So we started only in English, but then now we have 6 languages. And so the idea is to give a best-in-class donor experience. So that's our kind of target. And we're, so we are trying our best to reach there. And for that, of course, the key thing is also checking the satisfaction level. So we're trying to do that through different channels, through email, through phone, through so all possible channels to check their satisfaction. And maybe the other thing important, exciting is, we are trying to personalize the asks as much as possible, again, through different channels, prompting according to their history. And we see that it's working really well. So yeah, these are kind of exciting things, but yeah, lots more I could tell.
Maybe we'll be able to dig into some of them when you have a few questions, Ganesh. But thank you. It seems like the program is really moving. And, you know, it sounds like you've made some great successes, but if I could challenge you to say, where are there areas where you could grow in your program for digital supporter engagement? Are there things that you could be doing better or more of?
Yeah, actually, one of the things is, I mean, when you run a global program, it's not easy. I mean, some restrictions, legal restrictions, some tax, benefits changes country per country. There are quite a lot of details in the back end. I mean, sorting out these kind of details is important, but we are trying to go in a route that, I mean, you need to keep simple at the same time, when you're trying to localize it, but at the same time, you need to really keep simple. And so we are trying to make the payment options easy and frictionless as possible. So currently we give options of credit card, PayPal, but we are also working on other payment gateways, and so that's one. And the other thing is Facebook fundraisers, for example. We already have an account for Facebook fundraisers, but we haven't really had the chance to focus on that. And because I really believe that it's a good retention tool, and that's something makes sense for us also because quite a lot of supporters comes from Facebook already. So and they already use it. I mean, everyone use it, and yeah. So it is definitely a great tool. And we were about to start it actually, but then COVID happened, and so then we couldn't be quick enough to make the changes, and so we kind of waited so far. So, but that's on the list to do. And another thing is, yeah, I mean, journeys. I mean, it is something, an ongoing job. As I said, more sophisticated journeys according to the history of donors, according to their behavior, expectations, and motivations. So I mean, but this is also related with the data points we have. So we need to collect much more data points than if you have more data points, you can make it more sophisticated, of course. So that's something we are working on. I mean, because currently, during acquisition, the number of info we ask is very limited. Like it's just name, surname, email, and that's it. I mean, we don't really ask much at the acquisition point. I mean, point of acquisition, but then at the retention part, during journeys and all these, multi-channel approaches, then this is the point where we can collect more data points. So that's another key area that we are focusing on. And giving the supporter the control, the choice on how and when and through what channels they give, and make it easy to give. So that's a kind of a summary, maybe. That's where we are trying to go.
And I guess the last couple of questions I have for you are personal questions. What are the organizations that inspire your digital stewardship work? And maybe tell us just a little bit about that, and then I'll ask you to who inspires you in your work.
Yes, thank you. So, well, I mean, we talk a lot with our sister agencies in the UN umbrella, like UNHCR, UNICEF, a lot. So definitely, they are they are the organizations that inspires us. And Charity Water, personally, I really like their style, tone of communication at all. And so that inspires me a lot. And other than that, I mean, and in our program, we are also trying to think out of box most of the time, so that's something I'm trying as well, like totally trying, so testing something new as well. But yeah, I mean, these are the organizations, but much more. I mean, for example, I missed the fundraising online this year. I mean, it is always inspiring to hear from other organizations. It doesn't matter which organization it is, but you hear something and it clicks something in you, and then a creative idea comes up. So yeah.
And who inspires you in your work?
Well, I'm going to say our executive director, but it's not a political answer. I have to, yeah, I'm really honest. Because, I mean, our executive director, for example, David Beasley, he's always on the ground. He's a really great storyteller. And also his piece to camera kind of, the one that you mentioned, Douglas, an honest conversation, directly piece to camera, talking from the field. It works really well. I mean, both on the acquisition side and also retention side. I mean, people really respond to that. So he's one of our kind of spokesperson, and he's also great in thanking and asking for support. So I would say he's one of my inspirations. And then also some other communication officers at the field, like Shelly Tekaral, for example, in Afghanistan. It is quite easy to reach them, and they are really kind of trying to support us in terms of giving feedback to our supporters, and so this is and directly reporting through them with their signature in the emails, for example. It also really works well. But this is something we also know, from our past experiences. But people really like to hear from the field. And also our high value donors, for example, all donors, but high value donors as well. Like some of them are really like global citizens. I have to say, our donors. Like one is like he is a corporate, someone working in Egypt, but his son is based in the UK, and he's quite knowledgeable about let's say world issues and all. So these are, and then they make a research and find us and make a donation. So these donors mainly, I mean, they also give support to local agencies, local organizations, but at the same time giving to WFP for the global causes. So I find it very inspiring. I mean, and
Perfect.
also, yeah, so that's
I can see that, and I did some review of some of those individuals. They're really, I think we can see that when you have an executive like David who gets involved on the ground with the video and the updates and some of that work, it really, the inspiration isn't just for the donors, it's for everyone that we work together. Ganesh, thank you very much. A lot of information to consume in a very short period of time. And I guess we have some short 10, 15 minutes left. We could turn it over to Heather Heather and I will try and facilitate if there's questions from the floor, because I have a million questions, and I'm sure others do too. It's sounds like a really wonderful program, Ginesh, and I guess by way of closing, we all really support all of your work to move to a more personalized digital stewardship program. So let's hear from you. If you have some things that you'd like to share, or some questions for myself, Heather, or Ginesh, let's open the floor up, shall we say. I'm going to review the chats too.
Well, I was a little bit curious, Ganesh, if you could say a little bit more about your supporter journey and what that looks like digitally with World Food Program. Obviously, I'm sure it's quite an extensive program, so not all the different pathways that might happen, but maybe highlight an example of something that's notable, especially kind of leading into this kind of start to stewardship.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's the key thing is, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, that we focus on the welcoming and thank you, really. I mean, and the welcome journey is, for example, one of the key one. Because when we first recruit people, most likely, you know, they are attracted by one of our saving lives kind of adverts, like emergency ads. So they are more focused on to help people who needs food, and so that's the kind of first step that they come to WFP. But then that's, you know, just saving lives or giving emergency food is not what we only do. So after that point, we are trying to kind of inform them or educate them about what WFP is doing more on the ground, I mean, on this changing lives agenda as well, and also for what we do to kind of prevent that kind of emergencies to happen, and resilience activities and all. So it's so this welcoming process is a bit of an educational process also about what WFP and what we do and how they can support in different ways. But it's not from an organizational point of view. I mean, it's still very supporter-centric. But at the same time, we are also, I mean, focusing a lot on converting to regular donor at the very early stage through all these different channels. So this is our kind of, you know, top focus at the moment.
Thanks, Ginesh. Thanks, Heather. Good question. Did anyone else have a question from the participants who are still with us? It's great content. Again, Heather, this is taped and forwarded to all participants too?
Yes, the webinar has been recorded, and everyone who registered will be receiving a link to it.
Great. Great. I'm not sure there's any questions at the moment, but Ginesh, that might mean as much that you've given people answers to their questions before they get home. So that's not always a bad thing. I guess the only thing I'm always curious about is that broad strategic question when you're doing a yes, Robin just said, this has been wonderful. I have a laundry list to take back to the team. Thank you. Ginesh, do you find it's difficult to implement a global digital program that's being sensitive to cultural differences around the world? Or is that a big part of your conversation amongst your team, is how do we make things global and sensitive to people in Istanbul reading it differently than people in Chicago, Illinois?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, in terms of wording, we're really careful, definitely. I mean, it's so and you have a very good copywriter, I have to say. And then, and of course, yeah, I mean, local context and cultural differences is something important. We are, I mean, trying to be neutral, first of all, in on all our communications, and also we are a UN agency. When you talk about Ukraine, for example, it's not an easy thing to talk about. We need to be totally neutral and tell the story from the right angle, and in some cases, for example, we just sent a Yemen appeal, but for example, the MENA supporters receive it with a Ramadan wording. The rest of the world receives it without Ramadan. It's just, I mean, it's the generic Yemen appeal. So we also make some variations depending on the region, depending on the content. So yeah, but yeah, we are really careful in wording, and that's one of the key things to consider.
Well, thank you very much. That's always been a question, because I think the size of program and scope. And did you say that you are digitally engaged with supporters across 100 countries? Is that correct?
192, and I can give you just an idea about, like, last year through, for example, conversations was like 125,000 conversations happened with supporters, and like 30,000 supporter care emails and 29K WhatsApp messages. So it's a lot of lots of conversations going on.
It's interesting, Ganesh. You're suggesting that there's almost as many WhatsApp messages as there is email messages. So it's very popular.
That's true. That's very true. So WhatsApp. So it's not only WhatsApp. It's also SMS a little bit. But I mean, it also depends on the country. Which country uses what. And but also, of course, some language barriers. Even though they, for example, if this person was recruited in English, still if it is not their first language, it's not easy to communicate. So we also try to use a very simple language as well. I mean, in our communications, not very sophisticated, wording. But the key thing is to be able to communicate the problem and the solution, and giving feedback, telling about the impact of their support. So that's what we are trying to do.
Thank you. Heather, any last questions or anything, any other questions from the field? I think the content's been fabulous. I have a laundry list of things that I have to smarten up about, just to keep up with all the things that you're doing at the World Food Program. So thank you very much, Ganesh.
Well, thank you for this invitation. It was a pleasure to have the opportunity to tell about our program. So thank you again.
Thank you, Heather. I'll turn it over to you for any last questions or comments as we close things down.
No last questions from me, but I just want to thank you, Douglas and Ganesh, for the wonderful information that was presented today. Hopefully, many of you have laundry lists that you're taking back to your teams, or ideas and insights on ways you can improve things that you're doing now. I think we've been in a very evolving environment as more digital has been adopted, and donors are really signaling that they're responsive to it. So I think we all have things where we could learn and improve and grow, especially in our stewardship programs. Donor retention is so valuable, and if we can keep those donors who we already have, rather than going through cycle after cycle of acquisition, it certainly is a very value added part of our fundraising strategy. So again, thank you both for the content today. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us after the fact. And again, you will be receiving the recording of the webinar within a couple of days. So watch your email for that. Thank you again. We were so glad you were able to join us for this session on digital stewardship, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. Thank you.